Ever get that feeling?
Yeah.
Like you're talking, but nobody's listening. Or like maybe you are listening, but the message just gets all jumbled up, in transit. Communication, we do it every single day. But how often do we really nail it?
Yeah, it's way more complicated than we think, right? Like, we just take it for granted until it all goes sideways.
Exactly. And that's what we're tackling today, effective communication, the kind that really gets you results, builds relationships, and maybe even saves you from some serious headaches. Huge shout out to London Heartbeats Z Academy for all their amazing support on this deep dive.
For fantastic.
Listeners, if you're in healthcare and you want to level up, check them out online. Over 140 courses, and they're constantly updated, and they're all over social media, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube.
Wow.
So many free resources galore. And don't miss out on future episodes like this one. Make sure you subscribe to their channels.
Can't recommend them enough. London Heartbeat Seed Academy is a real gem.
Okay, so you, our listener, send in some fantastic materials on communication skills. And today we are extracting the gold and turning it into actionable advice.
That's right.
We're talking understanding what communication is, those pesky barriers that always seem to trip us up, the hidden power of how we speak and move, even techniques like star speaking, active listening, asking the right questions, giving feedback that actually helps, and networking like a pro.
It's all in here.
Are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
First up, back to basics.
Okay.
What exactly is communication? Seems simple, but
Well, it's the sharing of thoughts, opinions, information, and it could be through speaking, writing, even signs.
like a thumbs up or just shaking your head?
Yeah, all counts.
It all counts. And here's the thing. How well we communicate really impacts like every part of our lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Problem solving, productivity, stress levels, relationships, reaching our goals, even how satisfied we feel with life in general. It all comes back to communication. It's like this chain reaction. Good communication leads to better problem solving, less stress, stronger relationships. It really sets you up for success.
For sure.
Now, our sources are highlighting 3 biggies that influence communication.
Okay.
Method, mass, and audience.
Those are key.
They are key.
Method is how we're communicating. So is it face-to-face, email, phone calls, even social media?
Right.
Mass, that's how many people we're reaching, one person,
Oh.
whole crowd. And audience, that's who we're talking to. What are their backgrounds? What do they care about?
Tailoring your message. That's communication 101.
Yeah.
Now let's talk one-way versus two-way communication. What's the difference there?
Think of it like this. The sender of the message, they love that one-way street. They say their piece, boom, done.
Okay.
But the receiver, they almost always want that two-way exchange. They want to be heard, to give their input,
Makes sense. And there are pros and cons to both, right? Sometimes, an announcement is fine.
Right.
But for real understanding and teamwork, that two-way dialogue is crucial.
Yep.
Now, we all know that communication isn't always smooth sailing.
Oh, no.
In fact, I bet you, our listener, have had your fair share of communication breakdowns.
Who hasn't? It's frustratingly common.
Exactly. Our sources talk about how tough it can be to explain problems, present ideas, or simply feel like you're being heard.
Yeah,
The struggle is real.
it is.
But here's where it gets interesting. They break down these communication barriers into 3 categories:
Okay.
common barriers, sender-side barriers, and receiver-side barriers. It's fascinating how each category can shed light on why those breakdowns even happen.
Absolutely, and understanding those categories can be super helpful, just in figuring out what went wrong.
So let's get specific. What are some examples of these barriers from our sources?
Well, some are obvious, like language differences. If you're not speaking the same language, that's a major hurdle. Cultural barriers, too. Different cultures have different ways of communicating, different norms, even different interpretations of body language.
For sure.
And don't forget time zones. Trying to have a productive meeting when someone's just waking up and someone else is about to eat dinner.
Recipe for disaster.
Total recipe for disaster.
And those late-night emails.
Yeah.
Those can be a breeding ground for miscommunication.
Big time. And then you have the less obvious ones, like those that stem from our emotional states.
Okay.
If you are stressed, anxious, or angry, it's going to impact how you communicate and how well you listen.
Yeah. Emotions can definitely hijack a conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about words, but what about those unspoken signals?
That's paraverbal communication.
Yep, the unspoken power.
Right.
That's how you say it. Think about this. I could say, I didn't say you were stupid,
Uh-oh.
but my pitch, my tone, my speed can make that sentence mean 1,000 different things.
Perfect example of how powerful those subtle cues can be.
So let's break it down. Our sources are really focusing on the power of pitch, the truth about tone, and the strength of speed.
Okay.
Let's start with pitch. What's the takeaway there?
Lowering your pitch can actually make you sound more persuasive.
Really?
Yeah, it conveys authority and confidence.
Okay, I'm trying that. Now, what makes for a warm and engaging tone?
Smiling even when you're on the phone. People can hear a smile.
Oh, wow.
And surprisingly positive self-talk helps too.
Wait, really? So my thoughts can actually affect how my voice sounds?
Yes.
Mm.
If you're thinking positive thoughts, that positivity will come through in your tone. It's about projecting confidence and optimism. And then there's speed.
The strength of speed, as they say.
Right.
What's the deal with speaking speed?
Well, think about it. Someone who talks super fast might just sound nervous or impatient. And it can also make it really hard for the listener to even keep up.
Oh, I've definitely zoned out during those conversations.
And speaking too slowly can make people lose interest. It's about finding that sweet spot, clear and steady.
Our sources have this great line, keep calm and speak slowly.
I love that.
It's a good mantra. And remember, smiling and monitoring your pace can make a world of difference. Okay, let's talk nonverbal communication body language.
This is huge. This is maybe the most impactful element of communication.
Actions speak louder than words, right?
Right.
And get this, a statistic from our sources says 54% of communication is body language, 39% is voice, and only 7% are the actual words.
Wow, so we're always communicating even without saying a word.
Exactly.
Okay.
Let's get into some examples. What do they say about, say, sitting hunched over?
Sitting hunched over usually conveys stress, discomfort. It can make you seem closed off or insecure.
Okay, what about leaning back?
That can signal a more casual, relaxed demeanor.
So it's about finding that balance. What about standing super straight, like at attention?
That can suggest stiffness and anxiety. It might make others uncomfortable.
Interesting. I never thought of it like that.
It's about being aware of the messages our bodies are sending, even subconsciously.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Understanding communication, those barriers, the power of how we speak and move. Now let's talk about a framework that can really help structure our messages, the STAR method.
It's a fantastic way to ensure your messages are clear, complete, accurate, and concise.
I love it. For our listener, what does STAR stand for, and how does it work?
So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. Each part is crucial for a complete and impactful message.
Let's break it down. What's situation?
Situation sets the scene, the context. It answers the questions, where, who, when. What were the circumstances surrounding, this specific event or issue?
So you're painting a picture for them, helping them understand the background.
Right.
Then we move to task.
Exactly. Task outlines your responsibility in that situation. What was your role? What were you supposed to achieve? Why were you given that responsibility?
Okay, so you're clarifying your objective. Next is action.
Action describes the steps you took to address the situation or complete the task. How did you approach the challenge? What specific actions did you take?
And finally, result.
Result details the outcome of your actions. What was the impact? What did you achieve? Did you meet your objective?
The STAR method really makes sure that you cover all the bases. Context, task, actions, outcome. It's such a helpful way to organize thoughts and ensure your message is clear.
It's especially useful for situations like job interviews or performance reviews where you need to articulate your experiences and accomplishments effectively.
Now let's shift to the other side, listening.
They say it's the most important communication skill, but it's often overlooked.
It's so true. We're so focused on what we're going to say that we forget to listen to what the other person is communicating.
Our sources emphasize that listening makes up a whopping 45% of our communication.
That's almost half.
I know, it's huge.
Wow, that really highlights how crucial listening is for effective communication.
Yet so many people struggle with it.
I know, and I've been guilty of not listening as well as I should, especially when I'm tired or stressed.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
And our sources point out common complaints about managers not listening well. Interrupting, lack of eye contact, dismissive facial expressions. These all send the signal that the speaker isn't truly being heard.
It's demoralizing when you feel like your words are falling on deaf ears.
Oh, absolutely. The solution. Active listening.
We hear that term a lot, but what does it actually involve?
Active listening is a conscious effort to not just hear the words, but to truly understand the message. It involves identifying the speaker's perspective, paying attention to verbal and nonverbal cues, and responding appropriately through questions or paraphrasing to show you're following along.
So it's about engaging with the speaker and making sure you're both on the same page.
Yeah.
What are some practical tips to become a better active listener?
Well, sending good signals is crucial. Your body language should convey attentiveness. Maintaining eye contact, nodding to show understanding, leaning in slightly to show interest. Verbal cues like uh-huh, or wow signal you're engaged.
Those small affirmations can really make the speaker feel heard. What about asking questions?
Open questions are great to encourage the speaker to elaborate and clarify any points that might be unclear. Summarizing what you've heard can also ensure you're interpreting correctly.
Summarizing also gives the speaker a chance to correct any misunderstandings.
Right.
Our sources have a bunch of practical tips for active listening. One is focusing on the speaker's main ideas.
It's easy to get lost in the details, but active listening is about grasping that core message.
Another tip is being aware of emotional deaf spots. What does that mean?
We all have topics or opinions that trigger emotional responses, right? And these deaf spots can block objective listening. Being aware of these biases is key to overcoming them and truly hearing what's being said, even if you disagree.
So putting aside your own emotions and focusing on their perspective.
Exactly. And then there's fighting off distractions. In our world of constant notifications and information overload, active listening takes real effort to stay present and give the speaker your full attention.
It's like mindfulness for conversations. I love it.
It is.
They're also avoiding anger and judgment, letting others tell their story first and empathizing with them.
These are all about creating a positive and supportive listening environment. Approaching conversations with an open mind and a genuine desire to understand fosters trust and encourages open communication.
And appreciation goes a long way too. Appreciating the emotion behind the words, asking good questions, using feedback well. It's about showing respect and creating space for connection.
Active listening is a skill that takes practice. The more you consciously use these techniques, the better you'll become at truly hearing and understanding people.
Let's move to another essential skill, asking questions. We do it all the time, but there's an art to doing it effectively.
Our material highlights questioning as crucial, especially for managers.
Why is that? Why are questioning techniques so important for managers?
Effective questioning helps managers gather information, clarify expectations, solve problems, and build deeper understanding within their teams. It's about facilitating dialogue and encouraging participation.
Not just giving orders, but engaging in a collaborative exchange of ideas.
Exactly. Our sources outline 3 main types of questions that are particularly helpful in a professional setting.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are they?
First, open questions. These start with who, what, when, where, why, or how. They're designed to encourage expansive answers, inviting the speaker to share their thoughts and perspectives.
Going beyond simple yes or no answers and really digging deeper.
Yes. Then there are probing questions. These are used to clarify, ensure completeness, determine relevance, drill down into details, and summarize key points.
So making sure you're getting all the necessary information and understanding the nuances.
Precisely. Finally, there's the funnel technique.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. What's that all about?
The funnel technique is a sequence of questions that starts broad and gradually narrows down to a specific point. It's like guiding the speaker through a discovery process, starting with general inquiries and then honing in on key details.
I like that visual of a funnel. Can you give us some examples of each stage of the funnel?
Imagine you're trying to understand a project delay. You might start with a broad, open question like, tell me how you approached this project. Then you might move to a more specific open question like, how did you prepare? Then you'd start probing with questions like, what was your starting point? Or, so what happened next? Or, who else was involved?
So you're gradually getting more specific, guiding the conversation towards a clear understanding of the situation.
Exactly. As you get closer to the narrow end of the funnel, you might ask closed questions to confirm understanding or clarify specific details.
Like, so that took 6 weeks.
Yes, or was it your idea or someone else's, and the patient made a full recovery. These are clarifying questions to ensure everyone is on the same page. Finally, you might wrap up with a summary question to check your overall understanding. So let me see if I followed you.
That shows you've been listening attentively and are committed to fully understanding the situation.
Now let's talk about giving feedback, which can be tricky to do well.
Our material stresses the importance of constructive criticism, focusing on behavior, not the person. Addressing the issue, not attacking the individual.
Right. Our sources differentiate between 2 types of feedback: verbal written feedback and fact-feeling feedback.
Verbal written is the delivery method, but what's the difference between fact and feeling feedback?
Fact feedback focuses on objective observations, what happened, what was said, the actions taken. Feeling feedback addresses the emotional impact, how the person felt, how their actions affected others.
So what versus how, both are important for the full picture.
Absolutely. Now, our sources outline techniques for effective feedback, starting with giving and getting definitions.
What does that mean in this context?
It's about ensuring everyone understands each other. Are you using the same language? Do you share the same understanding of the terms?
Clarifying expectations from the start.
Exactly. Then there's avoiding assumptions. We jump to conclusions without all the facts. Effective feedback requires asking questions to gather information and ensure your feedback is based on accurate observations.
Approaching the conversation with curiosity instead of judgment.
Precisely. And they're speaking the same language, meaning clear and concise language that's easy to understand. Avoid jargon or technical terms that might confuse.
Tailoring your communication to the audience.
Yes. And two other important tips: keeping it tuned and withholding feedback when appropriate.
What does keeping it tuned mean?
It's about delivering feedback in a way the person can receive it. Consider their emotional state, personality, learning style.
Being sensitive to the individual and creating a safe space for communication.
Right. And sometimes it's best to withhold feedback. If you're angry or frustrated, it's not the right time. Cool down and approach it with a clear head.
Great advice. Our sources talk about a technique called the feedback sandwich. Tell us about that.
It's a simple but powerful way to deliver constructive criticism more palatably. You start and end with positive comments, sandwiching the critique or suggestions for improvement in the middle.
So cushioning the blow.
Exactly. By starting positive, you set a more receptive tone and acknowledge their strengths. Then you can address areas for improvement. Ending on a positive note reinforces their ability to grow.
A brilliant strategy. It acknowledges the good and the bad, focusing on improvement potential. Let's move on to networking, which relies heavily on good communication.
Networking is all about building relationships, and communication is key for making those connections.
Our sources outline key aspects of networking, starting with making a first impression. What's the key takeaway?
First impressions are crucial, formed in seconds. Projecting warmth and confidence through body language and a warm handshake can set the stage for positive interaction.
Making that initial connection and conveying openness and approachability.
Exactly. Then, of course, there's the effective introduction.
What makes a good introduction in networking?
Clarity and confidence. State your full name, position, and company, exchange business cards, and repeat the other person's name to show you're paying attention and value the interaction.
Repeating their name is such a simple but powerful way to show you're making an effort to remember and connect.
Absolutely. Our sources also highlight 3C: projecting competence, credibility, and charisma.
Love that. Let's break it down. What's projecting competence?
It's about showcasing your knowledge and expertise. Know the agenda and topics beforehand, be ready to answer questions clearly, and engage thoughtfully in discussions.
Being a valuable contributor to the conversation. What about credibility?
Credibility is about building trust. Be on time, dress appropriately, maintain good grooming, and most importantly, be true to your word and body language.
Walking the walk and talking the talk. Finally, charisma.
That intangible quality that draws people in, engage in effective short conversations, minimize nervousness, and master the handshake.
Speaking of handshakes, any tips on that?
Find that sweet spot between a limp fish and a bone crusher. Pump 2 to 3 times, shake from your elbow, avoid a forceful grip, and end the handshake before the introduction is over.
Balance between firm and gentle. I like that tip about ending it before the introduction is over. It shows you're mindful of their space and comfort.
Exactly. Now, business cards. They might seem old school, but they're still valuable for networking.
Any advice on using them effectively?
Always carry them. You never know when you'll need one. Be mindful of timing. Offering it at the start of a meeting can be premature, but at the end, or if they ask, is perfect.
What about explaining what you offer?
Crucial. Don't just hand it over briefly. Explain your skills, services, expertise, and how you might collaborate or help.
Turn a simple exchange into a meaningful connection.
Right. And once you have those cards, organize your contact list effectively.
Any tips for that?
Use cardholders Outlook or Google to keep track. After each networking event, review new contacts and make detailed notes for those who stood out. Send thank you emails to solidify the connection and review your list periodically to stay top of mind.
A great system for staying organized and nurturing those professional relationships.
Speaking of nurturing relationships, let's discuss effective short conversations. Our sources outline a 4-stage approach for smooth initial interactions.
Okay, what are the 4 stages?
First, small talk, generic topics. Almost everyone is comfortable with weather, current events, something about the venue.
Breaking the ice, establishing rapport.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then fact disclosure. You share facts about yourself, job, interests, background. You're looking for common ground and building connection.
Moving beyond the surface, getting to know each other.
Right. Next is the buffering effect, sharing viewpoints and opinions on topics like politics, education, business trends, engaging in more stimulating conversation, and seeing if your perspectives align.
Checking for intellectual compatibility.
Precisely. And finally, personal feelings. This is where you might disclose personal feelings, but it requires trust, rapport, maybe even friendship.
A level of intimacy that should happen organically, not forced.
Exactly. Building a genuine connection.
The networking can be nerve-wracking.
And
Tips for minimizing that.
preparation is key. Be informed about the event, the attendees, the topics. Practice your introduction and elevator pitch.
Reduce anxiety by feeling prepared and confident.
Right. Relaxation techniques help too. Meditation, self-talk, visualization, breathing exercises, calming music.
Finding what works for you to create calm amidst the chaos.
And identify your triggers. What situations or thoughts make you nervous? Once you know them, you can manage them.
Self-awareness and proactive planning.
And believe in yourself. Remember your value and strength and let that confidence shine through.
Let's dive into nonviolent communication, or NVC. It's about speaking and listening with compassion and empathy, even when things are tough.
It's a fascinating approach that prioritizes connection and understanding.
What are the 4 steps of NVC, as outlined in our source material?
First, observe actions that affect well-being. Objectively state what you see or hear without judgment or evaluation.
Separating facts from interpretation.
Exactly. Second, identify your feelings related to those actions. What emotions are you experiencing in response to what you've observed?
Tuning into your emotional state and acknowledging those feelings without blame.
Right. Third, recognize the needs, values, and desires that create those feelings. What unmet need is driving your emotional response?
Understanding the root cause of your feelings and what need isn't being met.
Precisely. Finally, request actions to enrich lives. Express a clear, specific request that would help meet your need.
Finding a solution that works for everyone.
Exactly. Our sources have a great example of expressing anger about dirty socks using NVC.
Let's hear it. How do you approach that with compassion and clarity?
Instead of saying, "You always leave your dirty socks on the floor, it's so disrespectful," you might say, "When I see 2 balls of soiled socks under the table and another 3 next to the TV, I feel irritated because I need more order in the rooms we share. Would you be willing to put your socks in your room or the washing machine?"
Wow, that's much more effective than just lashing out.
It's about expressing your needs and feelings in a way that invites understanding and collaboration.
It shows that even small situations can benefit from mindful communication. Our sources also mention alternative responses to difficult messages. What are those?
When facing a difficult message, we often react in one of 4 ways. Blame ourselves, blame others, sense our own feelings and needs, or sense others' feelings and needs.
The first 2 are about assigning blame, which rarely helps.
Right. The more constructive approach is focusing on understanding and empathy, both for ourselves and the other person.
How do we shift from blame to understanding in those heated moments?
Take a step back and tune into your emotional state. Our sources offer 4 steps for expressing anger effectively.
Okay, let's hear them. What's the first one?
First, stop and breathe. When angry, our bodies go into fight or flight mode and rational thinking disappears. Taking deep breaths calms the nervous system, letting you respond more thoughtfully.
Pausing before reacting.
Exactly. Second, identify your judgmental thoughts. What negative thoughts are fueling your anger?
Becoming aware of the internal dialogue that's escalating emotions.
Right. Third, connect with your needs. What unmet need is driving your anger?
Understanding the root cause and the unmet need.
Exactly. And finally, express your feelings and unmet needs in a clear, non-blaming way.
Communicating your needs without attacking the other person.
Precisely. And that leads us to a final technique for personal communication, shifting your perspective and approaching tasks with more agency.
Tell me more.
It's about translating have to statements into choose to statements.
Interesting. Instead of I have to work, you say I choose to work.
Exactly. A subtle language shift,
Right.
but it can profoundly impact your mindset.
What are the 3 steps our sources outline for making this shift?
First, list everything you tell yourself you have to do, even the things you dread.
Acknowledging those obligations that feel burdensome.
Right. Then the magic, add I choose to before each item.
I can see how that starts to shift the perspective.
Finally, complete the statement, I choose to because I want.
Connecting your choices to your values and goals.
Exactly. By reframing obligations as choices, we remember we have agency, even when feeling trapped by circumstances.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not passive participants, but active creators of our experiences.
Mm.
It's like taking back control and realizing we have options, even when it doesn't feel like it.
Exactly. It's about recognizing and owning, the power we have to shape our own experiences.
And that's a perfect segue to our final thoughts on effective communication, because it really is about taking charge of how we interact with the world.
Mm.
Looking back at all this incredible information you shared with us, it's amazing how interconnected all these different aspects of communication are.
Yeah, it's not just about being a smooth talker or writing fancy emails, right?
Yeah.
It's about understanding the nuances of human interaction, those barriers that trip us up, and mastering the art of listening, asking good questions, giving helpful feedback, all in a way that builds understanding, connection, and helps everyone grow.
It's a holistic approach.
Hmm.
You're realizing that every interaction, from chatting with a friend to a big negotiation at work, it's a chance to connect, learn, and make a positive impact.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing the potential in every interaction.
One of the biggest takeaways for me is the power of being intentional. It's not just going through the motions of communication. It's about being mindful of our words, tone, body language, and especially our intentions. What are we trying to achieve? What message are we sending verbally and non-verbally? Are we truly listening to understand or just waiting for our turn to talk?
It's that shift, from reacting to being proactive. We consciously choose our words and actions to create the results we want.
And that takes practice,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't happen overnight. We
Right.
have to keep honing our skills, be open to feedback, and see those inevitable stumbles as chances to learn.
Couldn't agree more. Effective communication is a journey, not a destination. It's a lifelong pursuit of mastering how we connect with others in a meaningful and impactful way.
Speaking of journeys, I keep thinking back to that analogy about the funnel technique for asking questions. Start broad, then narrow down to the heart of the matter.
Brilliant technique. And it applies beyond work to any conversation where you want deeper understanding.
So true. And it reminds me of another gem, the feedback sandwich. Simple but effective for giving constructive criticism that's both honest and encouraging.
A classic for a reason. It acknowledges strengths and areas for improvement, making space for growth without being harsh or negative.
That's something I personally want to work on, being more mindful about how I give feedback. It's easy to slip into negativity, especially when we're stressed.
We've all been there. That's why techniques like nonviolent communication are so valuable. It's about expressing needs and feelings in a way that's both assertive and kind.
Moving from blame to understanding, from judgment to empathy, it's not always easy, but worth striving for.
Here's one final thought. Every interaction is an opportunity to connect. Every conversation, email, text message, it's a chance to build relationships, share ideas, and make a positive impact.
Beautifully said. Communication isn't just a means to an end, it is the end. It's how we connect as humans. The thread that binds us together lets us create something bigger than ourselves.
Couldn't have said it better myself. What a fantastic deep dive into the world of effective communication.
I agree. Huge thanks again to London Heartbeat Seed Academy for their incredible support in making this happen. Listeners, if you're in healthcare, do yourself a favor and check out their website. Over 140 courses, always up to date, and they're active on social media. Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, so many free resources to keep you at the top of your game. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss amazing discussions like this one.
They're an invaluable resource for anyone in healthcare.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into effective communication, I want to leave you with this question. How will you use these insights to transform your communication and build deeper, more meaningful connections in your own life? Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those conversations flowing.